Hello, everyone. Welcome to this FRS Masterclass on International Women's Day. And welcome also, Lucinda. Very good to see you. My
Thank
name
you.
is Sherry Coutu, and I'm delighted to be here with you today for this 30-minute session, which has three parts. Part one is dedicated to the fastest growing scale-up business run by women in the UK. We're focusing on scale-ups because they are fast growing companies where customers love their stuff and they keep on ordering more and more and more of it each year. These fast growing companies drive the growth of the cities and of our country, but they're often invisible. It's often hard to see them and hard to know who created them and who's running them. On average, they hire 4 times more people than big companies. And also, the people who work for these small, rapidly growing companies are usually really happy working for them. So they're really important for all of us to think about on a daily basis. We have partnered with the Scale Up Institute to do this. They have released today a huge compilation of the women-led businesses in the UK. There's 34,000 of them. And there's about just under 750 that are growing very, very fast and have at least 10 million pounds in turnover, which is a huge amount of turnover. And very few companies get to turnover that high. We are really lucky today because we have Lucinda Bruce-Gardyne, who is here with us. She has been the creator of one of these amazing companies where the customers literally just can't get enough of what her company creates. And we wanted her to talk about what her inspiration was, what has her career been, and I guess what her life is like as one of these business creators. We'd love you to talk to everyone you know about Lucinda after this and about what you learned. So the way that we will work this is I'm going to turn over to Lucinda, and she's going to talk about her life. And then we're going to ask questions. Or if you don't ask questions in the Q&A, I will ask questions, but I'm hoping that you choose to ask questions in the Q&A. So really looking forward to this session. And why don't we get started? Lucinda, over to you. Talk to us a little bit about your inspiration. When you were 11 or 12, what were you thinking you might be doing? Did you think that someday you would be, one of the UK's leading business icons, or did you have different thoughts about what you might be?
Well, firstly, morning, everybody. It's really lovely to be speaking to you today, and I hope you have a fantastic International Women's Day. I was really, really surprised to be invited to talk about me and maths, because maths was never something I found easy at school. I really struggled. I didn't really understand how it related to the real world, particularly sort of later on in school, where maths became a little bit harder and a little bit more theoretical. And I wish I'd known, I wish I'd had events like this to go to give me that inspiration. When I was 11, I loved singing and I wanted to be an opera singer, in fact. But I suppose my love of food and science in the end of the day won. I went to university after school, having, loved all my subjects, actually. I loved writing, I loved English, I loved art, I loved chemistry and biology in particular. So I went to university after thinking quite hard. I had a year off actually after school because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I went back to university to study physiology, which is the science of how the body works. And I thought probably I was going to be a doctor while I was doing my physiology degree. But the more I did my degree, the more I realized I had a real calling for food. Food is my absolute passion in life. And the food industry has so many different possibilities to work in. You can use science, you can use English, you can use art, you can use engineering, you can use your languages. You can use so much in the food industry, and obviously you can use your love of food and cookery and developing recipes and all of these sorts of things and writing cookbooks. So I actually ended up having spent a few years running a catering company, writing cookbooks on the science of cooking, actually, working as a chef in a Michelin star restaurant in London. I ended up starting a gluten-free bread company called Genius Foods. And the reason I did that is because my son, at the age of 3, was diagnosed with a very serious gluten intolerance. Gluten is the protein in wheat flour, and it's the scaffolding for all of the bakery products that we eat. It creates the bubble structure of bread. It creates the lovely layers in a croissant and puff pastry. It creates the spongy texture of bread. It allows you to roll out pastry. And if you can't use wheat flour, all of those bakery products become very, very difficult to make. And so because I had a science background and because I loved food and because my son was ill, I realized that that was my calling in life, was to find a way to produce a gluten-free bread that was fresh and really delicious, that would allow people like him to have a sandwich again, because bread is a staple. We eat bread all the time. And I wanted my son and others like him to enjoy sandwiches for picnics, for lunch boxes, for traveling. And that's basically what I dedicated the last 17 years of my life to.
And was it at school when you met someone that gave you the idea that maybe starting up a business was something that you could do? I'm interested to hear the connection between being a mom of someone at a school and, you know, being encouraged to help millions of people rather than just your son. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, so I suppose even at school, and even when I was thinking about being an opera singer, and then at university, even when I was thinking about being a doctor, I always wanted to do something that was going to be helpful, that would really be helpful in life. I'd seen my family go into business. I think many of my family members were really strong role models for me, actually, and certain friends have done exceptionally well, and I really admire them. So I think it is, if you see someone that you really admire, you know, that can give you some real energy to try and do the same sort of thing. And then when I was dropping my son, who wasn't very well, to school, and while I was developing the bread, it took me 2 years to develop a fresh gluten-free bread in my kitchen at home, because it's so difficult to produce. And I'd turn up to school every day completely covered in flour, because I'd be making bread all day. And one of the fathers at school said, "Golly, Lucinda, why are you always covered in flour?" And I said, "Well, I'm creating a gluten-free bread for my son and for other people who can't eat bread." And he said, "Golly, well, you know, please let me see it, you know, when it's ready, because I can't eat bread. I haven't been able to eat bread for 30 years. And I dropped some around to his house when I'd finally commercialized it at the bakery. I'd taken it to a bakery, scaled it from my 2-kilo Magimix recipe in my kitchen to 200-kilo batch in the factory, because I didn't want to show him something out of my oven. That would have been silly, because you can't sell that. I needed to show him something that I'd already made at scale. And he said, "Lucinda, you know, I've created a very big business. And the one thing in life I can't have is bread. And I'd really like to help you create a business." And he actually put some money behind me to bring on a team and develop the logo, the name Genius, the branding around it. So all the design that goes around a brand, and to help me negotiate with the supermarkets. And in the end, we literally a year or so later, we launched the bread into 700 supermarkets across the UK, which was the most exciting thing.
Am I right in remembering that there were queues of people that at first there wasn't enough product in the supermarkets, and there were queues of people around the block who literally just wanted your
Yes.
stuff? Maybe
Yeah.
talk about that, because I think, you know, you know, for those of us in business, and, you know, understanding, well, what's a scale up, is just that people can't get enough of your product because they love it so much. So just talk about that and how that encouraged you to do more and to go to places you never thought you would go to.
Yes, so the gluten-free bread in the supermarkets, when I was first looking at the category, so that looking at the shelves in the supermarkets to see what was there, when I was desperately trying to find some bread for my son, it was very, very hard and crumbly. It was not very natural. It was in lots of plastic because it had a 9-month shelf life. And so when Genius Bread hit the shelves in 2009, it was the first fresh bread that anyone had ever seen that couldn't eat normal bread. And it meant that they could have a sandwich again. And because the bread hadn't been selling before, because it was so awful, the supermarkets didn't know how much to order. And so they would only order from Genius 2 days a week. And because of that, everyone realized, customers realized that they would have to get to their supermarkets on a Tuesday and a Friday, and they would queue around the block, as Sherry just mentioned. And because they weren't sure when they were going to be able to find the bread again, they would buy 6 loaves at a time. And so it was really difficult. You normally use a lot of maths to forecast how much bread you need to make, or how much product you have to make when you're a manufacturer. And it was so difficult to do that. And very quickly, we were making 10,000 loaves a week. And then we went up to 1 million loaves a month, because the demand for fresh gluten-free bread was so enormous. As I mentioned earlier, bread is a staple and we eat bread all the time. And as we started to get very well known in the UK, I started to get phone calls from America, from Spain, from Scandinavia, from France. And very quickly, I was taking the recipe out to Canada for the North American market. I was in Spain for the Southern European market, working with ingredients that they were able to get hold of to make gluten-free bread for their markets. And ingredients are different in each country. So there's a lot of chemistry, and there was also a lot of physics around using the ingredients that were available in those countries to, again, produce the really delicious bread that I'd produced in the UK. It was very complicated, but very exciting and challenging.
Great, thank you. So talk a little bit about what does a day in the life of Lucinda look like now? I know that you're doing some slightly different things. I mean, I think, you start out, you went from year 11 to, a few years ago starting up Genius, and then now you're doing some other stuff, which is quite interesting. I think you're doing some things with the Royal Society, but I think you also chair the Food Manufacturing Association. And what exactly does that do? And why is it important to the children who are watching sort of watching and listening to this program?
So I feel very, very lucky. I do lots and lots of different things now. I chair an organization called Scotland Food and Drink, and it's an organization that looks after all of the different segments of the food and drink industry. As I mentioned right at the beginning of this session, food and drink is a very, very exciting sector to be in, because we work with farmers and fishermen. We work with people that farm carrots. We work with people who are designing vertical farms. I don't know if any of you have heard of vertical farms, but that's when you grow crops inside under lights, and that's very, very helpful for being able to make crops all year round. I work with the Scottish Whisky Association. So I work with all of these different parts of the Scottish food and drink supply chain, and help support them grow, be more resilient. And also we look at how they could be producing food and drink in a sustainable, carbon, a low carbon way. So there's lots and lots of innovation around that. I also help other women who are developing products and trying to get their food manufacturing businesses off the ground. I don't want other women to make the same sorts of mistakes as I did as I grew my business, but also give them tips and tricks, all the learnings that I have developed, I suppose, and give them to them right at the beginning, so that their journey possibly is a little easier maybe than sometimes I found it.
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you overcame some challenges. I mean, you just referred to mistakes that you've made, and I think we all make mistakes, and sometimes we're fearful of certain things or aren't sure that we can do it. But what springs into your mind as you're helping other women run their businesses or learn how to make an idea a thing, such as maybe possibly every student in this masterclass is thinking, ooh, what kind of business will I run someday? What would be your piece of advice to them, be them?
Well, I think one thing I definitely had was huge passion for what I was trying to do. So I would suggest, if you ever want to start a business, choose something that you feel really passionate about, because that gives you energy to work through the challenges, because there are lots of challenges as well as opportunity in running a business. One of the big learnings that I had was we were trying to give our consumers everything they asked for. The moment they could eat bread, again, then when they realized that fresh gluten-free bread was possible, they were asking for crumpets, for cakes, for biscuits, for pancakes. And I was desperate to give them all those things. And as I mentioned earlier, we had people ringing us from America, from Europe, from Australia, saying, please, can you bring your products here? We should have been more focused. We should have been much more focused, because the more you try to do, the harder it is to do things really well. So what I think the biggest learning is to understand what the biggest opportunity is, focus on doing that brilliantly, so that you're in a much better position to then look at the next opportunity and do that really well too.
Excellent, thank you. And are there times when you, I don't know, were really glad that you had your chemistry, because it allowed you to solve problems that you just wouldn't have been able to see a solution for? I'd like to hear that a little bit as well.
Yes, so that was also an enormous learning, actually, which I probably should have mentioned a moment ago, that scaling a product, and certainly scaling a formulation, so scaling a recipe, is very, very difficult. So normal wheat bread contains 4 ingredients: flour, water, yeast, salt. Gluten-free bread requires 20 ingredients, and every ingredient is its own chemical. And when you put all of those ingredients into a bowl, chemically, there are so many interactions going on. There's lots of molecular interactions, and depending on how those ingredients are processed in the beginning, it can make a really big difference to the quality of the end product. So we found that if we used tapioca starch, which is one of the ingredients, if we bought that from Vietnam, it behaved completely differently to tapioca starch from South America. And at the beginning, we didn't understand why. And if we made Vietnamese tapioca starch bread, the bread didn't work. And if we used South American tapioca starch bread, it worked beautifully. And so we really needed to understand the chemistry of what the difference was between those ingredients, and how that was affecting the physics as well of the formulation. And also we found that when you put the bread dough through different pieces of equipment, the bread would turn out differently. And again, and that was all about physics. It was about the stability of the bread structure, the bubble structure in the bread. And so we used to work with physicists at Edinburgh University to help us work through these issues. And these little tiny details in a small pot become very large problems in a large pot of dough. It amplifies the problem. So really understanding the science behind everything you're doing is absolutely essential. And I help a lot of businesses with that now. And I work with the physics school at Edinburgh University to help connect them with businesses that I believe would do very well speaking to them about their problems.
Yeah, and I guess what you've just said um, gives us some insights into we never stop learning. And I know that our audience now is between 11 and 14, and they may think, oh well, I'll finish school and maybe I'll go to university, and well, that'll be that. But I think what you're talking about is your passion led you to want to learn how to help millions of people, and so you had to work with quite a few other folks who weren't formal teachers, but maybe who understood the pathway that you were on, well, better than you did. And can you talk about how you learn once you're out of school and in business? And if it's your own business, did you ever feel alone, or did you always feel that, you know, there were places that you could turn to help figure out what you needed to do so that you could overcome whatever barrier had presented itself to you?
Well, business is all about getting on with people, really, and understanding people, because business is never about one person. It is a team effort. And okay, I spent the first 3 years of my business developing the bread pretty much on my own, and then with the bakery. But then, you know, when you create a business, you need people who are good at maths, so finance. You need creative brains that are good at marketing and packaging design and logos and that sort of thing. You need HR people, so human resource people who are great at getting the best out of the team. You need lots and lots of different people. You need engineers that are great at looking at the equipment and keeping it all going and bringing in new pieces of equipment. And so it's so important to listen to people carefully, respect everyone you're working with, understand what they need to do their job really well. I think you also have to be very good at influencing decisions and managing people. So it's a real business is a science of human behavior, as well as the science of whatever you're doing if you are producing a product. I think it's really important, I think, in business to enjoy meeting new people from all different backgrounds, from all different countries, that have completely different expertise. That's what makes business so interesting, don't you think, Sherry? Is that ability to be able to spend time with people you never thought you'd be sitting around the table with. It's so exciting. It's important to be able to present and write clearly so that you're communicating your ideas clearly. If you speak another language, my goodness, that's so helpful, because being able to do business in someone's language can open doors for you. And business in different countries happens in different ways. And also understanding people's body language can really help you do business well. They might be saying one thing, but they might be thinking another. And being able to really understand that emotional intelligence is really important too.
So I know that you've got to go in 3 minutes. So wondering if there are any last pieces of advice, you know, particularly about, you know, what's the, you know, in addition to maths, because we know maths is a gateway to many things, but in addition to that, what's been the secret sauce of your confidence in being able to achieve your goals and have an impact that you know, that probably exceeds what you thought it might be when you were 11 or 12. But what's the, you know, advice that you'd have for the folks around the table at the moment?
I think that's such a brilliant question. I think go out into the world and do something that you really love. Do a degree that you feel you have a really close relationship with, you know, doing a subject that you just sort of naturally understand, or go into the way you don't even need to have a degree. You can just go into the world as an apprentice. You know, it doesn't just have to be through a degree, but further education is something that you absolutely love. Because I think when you do something that you absolutely love and you care deeply about, you will be really good at it. And it can take a little bit of time to find that thing. And quite often people don't just start a career and just stay in that one job for years and years and years. When you start working, it's the beginning of a really exciting journey. It's like stepping stones, and you'll learn certain things in one job that you absolutely love and the things that you don't love. And you try and make sure that the next job you have, you're using more of what you love, and just keep an eye out for possibilities and opportunities. If you come up against something where you feel something doesn't work, the system doesn't work, or you can't find a product that you're after, don't say, oh, for goodness sake, why isn't that out there? Think about whether you can do it yourself. You know, don't complain, do it yourself. So that's often the way that entrepreneurs become business people. They've spotted a problem and they've decided to solve it. So look out for those problems that you might be able to solve.
Well, listen, I think that's very good advice. And I love the story of how when you were 11 or 12, you wanted to be an opera singer. But you found yourself being, through your additional passion around food, doing all sorts of things that indeed not only helped your family, but has helped millions of people around the world. So thank you for that. I think as a role model to not accept, the world as we find it and to think about what can we do to make it the world we want to live in. That's really important for all of us. So thank you. I know you're going to drop off now, so I look forward to seeing you again soon. Very grateful for your time and for your the inspiration you've given. I think to certainly to me, and I'm sure everybody on the call.
Well, that's a pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me along. And have a wonderful day, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the speakers. All the best.
Thank you. Take care. Right. So I think for the Lucinda's going to drop off, and I can't see that there's any questions that have been answered in here. So unless there are questions that you want to pose, I will wish you a very good, happy International Women's Day. It's been great to bring Lucinda to you. I would encourage you to use our service and bring other people like Lucinda into your class at any time that you'd like. We have hundreds of amazing women and men who have started up their businesses, and they're fascinating to hear from. So I look forward to hearing from you. Hope this has been helpful. Please give us your feedback. It's really important to us that we hear from you and that this is what you want it to be. So very grateful. And again, enjoy your International Women's Day and have a great weekend as well. Thank you.